Welcome, everybody. My name is Ryan Perry, and I'm your host. I am here with the Miles Johnson, Emmy Award winning Morehouse man. How's it going, man? How you been?
I'm doing good, Ryan. Pleasure to be on here, and glad to talk some sports.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Happy to have you here. As somebody that I met with in my time working at Olympics, I got to experience the corporate side of sports. You yourself, you have a social media platform that's known worldwide, honestly, where you're going big time with this. Somebody who's known all across Philly, all across the world as being known as the Philly sports fanatic. How would you say that athletes within your city alone are treated? Because I've heard that a lot of guys within Philly sports have issues within the media, especially players of color.
It's interesting because, like, being from Philly, like the sports media landscape in Philly is unlike any other. So I'm kind of blessed to be from a city where it's not like Milwaukee, no shade to them, where it's just not as passionate. I do think that it's like a certain responsibility to cover these athletes fairly, and they look at black sports writers to give a fair honest assessment of who these players are. So I definitely think it's some responsibility in there, and I definitely like don't take it lightly, and I look at like the greats that came before me as a blueprint on just how to conduct myself in media.
As somebody who takes great responsibility within media, what do you feel that you yourself can do to change the narrative? Because I'm not sure if you're hearing what's going on with all these talks around quarterbacks within the NFL, but there's this discourse between, it seems as though there's fans that's on the side of Lamar Jackson and then fans that's on the side of Josh Allen. And in the world of sports, we should just be able to appreciate both players' greatness, but it seems as though it's almost a race war at this point. What are your opinions on that?
It's interesting because I posted a video recently where I was like, at a certain point, we got to start judging Josh Allen the way that they cover all the elite quarterbacks in the game. And I'm a certain person, I'm going to be consistent. And how we were talking about Lamar last year, and he had a great regular season. And I said, well, you got to get done in the playoffs. He did not get it done. And I called him out for it. Now, the following season, I wasn't really on Lamar and the Ravens like that because it's like I had some injuries here to the team. Now the focus was on Josh Allen. And Josh Allen does what Lamar did last year, multiple turnovers. And actually worse, Lamar didn't have the 4 turnovers that Josh Allen had this year, but I'm hearing let's forget the turnovers. Let's forget all the mistakes. This was the play here that should have won the game, when we all know well that this was Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts that had a 4 turnover game. They're getting slandered. So I think that the inconsistencies that you see from a lot of people that don't look like me and you um have been like a big reason why I just simply had to just speak out on it. But it's real. A lot of times people will try to act like racism in football, or just the whole race dynamic of the quarterback position isn't a thing. It flat out is. And it's just it's crazy that it's 2026 and you're still seeing, black quarterbacks be held to a crazy standard that you simply have never seen white quarterbacks be held to.
Right, very understandable. And I'm glad that you brought up racism within just the quarterback position, because if we look back in history, there's plenty of times where we've had this story of a black quarterback who's known as being somebody who's really talented, as in Lamar Jackson. And then when it comes time for draft night, or draft, the whole process of the draft combine, they're asked to switch their position. I've never heard of a white quarterback who was of a certain caliber was asked to switch their position. So do you feel as though the narratives that they push in today's media, just for example, with the Lamar and Josh Allen situation, do you feel it's more of them trying to not say not say that they were wrong in the sense of them talking about black athletes, but more of they don't want to be wrong in their sense of saying, "Oh, we wanted him to switch positions, and he's proven us wrong that he can play quarterback, so we're just going to talk bad about him." Or do you think they're just continually talking bad about him because of his race?
So they're certainly talking bad about him because when somebody proves you wrong, then you want to find, okay, what next can I say that the guy hasn't accomplished to where that's my next knock on him? So with Lamar Jackson, he was called, he should be a wide receiver. Well, now he's a two-time MVP. He's a three-time first team All Pro, something that the best quarterbacks in the league haven't done. And so Matthew Stafford himself, he don't have two MVPs. He been in the league. He's 37. Lamar, like 10 years younger, he got more MVPs, more first team All Pros. And so you can't talk about him as a quarterback. Now all you can say is, well, he hasn't done it in the biggest moments. He hasn't done it in the playoffs. And so that's the thing with Lamar Jackson. They're always going to find, the next thing to criticize him on. Now, again, for me, it don't matter who the athlete is. I'm big on what you do in the biggest moments, what you do in you just biggest moments, and do you play at your apex? So that's why I'll do it. But I just find it weird that the same folks that was saying Lamar isn't going to pan out in the NFL, now their next knock on him is, well, he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. So we know where that comes from. But I'll also add to this, it's like when you talk about Lamar Jackson, you always got to talk about like these folks going to think this way regardless. But the good thing about Lamar, he has the most to gain, I feel like, out of any quarterback in the game if he wins a Super Bowl, because then you're talking about he's in rarefied air. There's not too many guys with two MVPs, three first team All Pros. And then you're looking like, oh, in terms of the running quarterbacks, Lamar's the standard, and he won a bowl. That just, shifts a whole lot of narratives. I think the reason why Jalen Hurts gets a lot of criticism is because he plays a brand of football people are not accustomed to seeing. And you saw in the Super Bowl, he broke the rushing record for a quarterback both times he was there. And so I'm a big Hurts fan as well. But the reason why these guys get the criticism is because they're in a playing style, they're in an offense that, isn't normal to everybody else.
That that I definitely agree with. I feel as though a lot of these players, because we love the 80-yard, 75-yard bombs, the Mahomes running around, throwing the ball, looking just all these highlight plays while being a pocket passer. We've heard this term, it's a funny term on social media where they say somebody's not quarterbacky enough.
Exactly.
That's just another way of saying he's not white enough to play this position. So, as somebody with your stature in social media right now, how do you feel you can navigate this situation to where obviously you yourself can't change it by with just yourself on social media? Me myself, I can't change it. But what do you feel that me, you, and anybody else that wants to do what we do could do to help this narrative around all players of color?
Yeah, I think one part is when you look at how journalism is today, the stories are told through social media. Now, a big reason why I started Real Talk with MJ was because, well, yeah, I could just, wait for a newspaper, a television station to pick me up with 15 years from now, and I'll be, on the, working in the middle of nowhere for the next 10 years. My mentors did that with social media. The way that your story can get out to the people is simply on another level. So I think there's a lot of responsibility on the content creators, but really like the people that took social media to say, all right, I'm gonna meet people where they're at. All right, not everybody's gonna be on the New York Times, or if you're a Philadelphia fan, on the Philadelphia Inquirer getting their news. They're gonna go on TikTok, they're gonna go on Instagram, they're going on YouTube, they're going on Twitter. And so because of that, you have to just take storytelling very, very serious. And part of that is in the content that you make. So I'm always thinking about, okay, what's the story that I'm giving to the people when I talk about a certain player and all of that. Now, sometimes I'm criticizing the black player, and some of them, they gotta just understand that's what you gotta do. But there's always gonna be a time that you gotta pick, like, are you going to stand for something, or just going to be quiet and just let stuff, happen the way it's happening? So I think there's definitely a responsibility of journalists now to use their platform, to use social media to meet people where they're at, and then control the narrative that way. And I think a lot of these athletes that look like us will appreciate that, because a lot of the ones that don't look like them, they don't understand the experience. They don't understand just what these athletes have to go through on a day-to-day basis, and the expectations that they're held to. So I really think like social media is such an important tool that if you're not doing it, then you're doing a disservice to yourself. But also, if you've created a platform, created a brand for yourself on social media, there's a responsibility for you to treat these athletes fairly, to give great insight, but also have well researched insight that comes with facts. So the name of the game, like social media, like, is not going anywhere. That's where people get their news. But another part of it is like, all right, how do you craft your own story through social media? It's just a different medium, different way of telling a story compared to a written article. But not to say that it's better or worse than the traditional way.
Okay. Okay. Well, to navigate into our final question, I want to ask you, as somebody, this is more of a personal question between me and you. As somebody in sports media, how would you go about, I want to say, okay, for myself, I've always had this dream of owning my own company, like as we know, ESPN, TNT, Fox, but I want it to be where it's almost a station full of people in color, but I don't want it to seem as though it's like a race barrier thing or like we don't allow whites. But I want it to feel like a black owned almost ESPN. But with the way social media is now and with podcasts and YouTube channels, stuff like that, there's a better, as you said, it's easier to access news that way. How do you feel somebody can navigate that to where they can have their own platform, but still be of stature of ESPN, Fox, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's important to just be true to who you are. Like, I don't post anything that I frankly don't believe. Now, my pitch might be higher. I might try to do some dramatics, but everything that I say, I believe 100%. I do believe too, is like, there's gonna be a time where, especially in the time that we're in right now, you gotta choose what side you're on. I do not believe in that whole staying in the middle and trying to, I'm gonna just play both sides. No, not with the political climate, not with what's going on right now. You gotta choose. Are you gonna be with the good? You're gonna be with the evil, because a lot of evil that's going on right now. If you're playing both sides, then you're essentially playing into the evil side. Now, I will say that's something that I've looked at and I've seen. I was called like a Stephen A, somebody who I respect, somebody who I, you know, been inspired by in this space. But that whole like, playing to both sides, I'm just sorry. Like, you got to figure out, all right, what is my reputation gonna be? And yeah, I can get engagement, but does the engagement outweigh my reputation? Because your word in your name is all you have, especially in journalism, when you want to have a great name that you can talk to these athletes and they respect you and they feel like you're gonna share their stories very, very well in that aspect. So that's one way there. It's like engagement versus reputation, and folks gotta gauge that. And like I said in the beginning, it's like Stay true to yourself. Don't talk about nothing that you haven't researched, that you haven't done your due diligence, because people are going to know. People are definitely going to know. But I've seen, you know, great sportscasters that have started their own media company, and they're hiring folks that look like them. They're putting folks that look like them in positions. So because we black, oh, we don't want to be the one, or I'm just making about black people, but everybody do it, for their own reason. No, I feel like we shouldn't feel, oh, well, we just gotta put on somebody else that don't look like us or whatever. Now you want to get the most qualified person. You want to get the most qualified person regardless. And that could be, somebody that doesn't look like you, or that could be, a black person. Like, but I don't feel like it should be any shame or anything, anybody thinking, well, shoot, maybe I can't, say this. Maybe I can't hire this person, or I don't want to annihilate certain people. I'll leave you with this. I grew up with my dad, being a pastor, and we weren't apologetic about it being a black church. Now, would be some people that would come in that are white that would come in and they would praise with us, but best believe, just because a couple of white people came, it's still a black church. And so I look at it saying with like media, like, you're going to have your identity. Just because a couple more people are your audience members, you don't strip away from what your identity is. So that's something that I live by. I think seeing my dad start his own church and create the identity and to create something that you're just unapologetic for, that just in turn like transfer over to me. And that's not gonna go anywhere.
I just want to say thank you for coming out, giving some of your time out to speak with me and to share some game with some of my classmates that I'll be sharing this interview with. Once again, thank you for coming out and see you after.